Now, did you know that police officers in South Africa, on average, kill somebody each and every day? For every financial year since IPID started registering these sorts of claims, more than 380 deaths, more than one person per day has been reported. Viewfinder has now published the database on these killings put together by the police watchdog body. Viewfinder's new police accountability tracker dashboard reveals the extent to which officers have been involved in brutality and corruption and the extent to which those implicated have escaped accountability. To discuss, we're joined by investigative journalist at Viewfinder Daneel Knoetze. Mr. Knoetze, thank you very much. So you're collating data that has been kept by IPID, the watchdog body, but you've put it, I think, in map form. Just explain. You're saying people can see what's going on nationally and then even at their local police station.
Quite right. Thank you so much for having me this afternoon. Yes, so we've been working on this for a good 2.5 years now. This is collating data from the police watchdog IPID, and IPID registers criminal complaints against the police, such as killings when they are unlawful, and in the country, police kill people lawfully as well in defending their own lives. They register assault, rape, torture, and corruption allegations, including deaths in custody. And what we see in this data is not only that there's a massive caseload in terms of the number of people that have been killed, but also have reported abuses by the police service, but also what the data tells us is that there's a systemic failure of accountability, and that often is down to the police management failing to properly enact watchdog findings when their police officers have been found to have erred and to have broken the law and to have abused and violated people's rights unlawfully. Yeah. And that really, thank you.
Well, IPID themselves have raised this issue that they can do an investigation and they can make a recommendation, but the ones doing the actual disciplinary hearings and making the final decisions on the fate of those officers are their superiors. And it seems like they're often protecting their own. So this seems to need to change urgently. Why is that not happening?
Absolutely, and I think you've really hit the nail on the head in terms of what our investigation around this data has shown. Not only is IPID woefully under-resourced and underfunded and incapable, really, of investigating the massive caseload that it has on its books every year, it is wholly reliant on the institution that it investigates, and very often the police officers themselves that have a conflict of interest in enacting these findings against their colleagues to give teeth to their investigations and to their findings. The question as to why this hasn't been addressed is really difficult. It's political, of course. IPID answers to the police minister. It answers to the political head of the police. And IPID is really subordinate to police management in terms of accountability. And I don't think that the police watchdog IPID has done enough to raise the profile of this conflict of interest and of these loopholes that are so often exploited by the police. But I think really the police are impervious to criticism. We see very often that they go over the heads of parliamentarians that question these things. And I think it's really up to civil society and ordinary South Africans to start standing up. And that's what this police accountability tracker allows people to do, to look at their own police stations and to hold the police accountable on a local level, which hopefully will, from the ground up, bring the necessary pressure on management and to the systemic kind of interventions we need.
So what does this tell us as South Africans about the behaviour of police officers? Is it any excuse that someone gets killed every day because South African criminals are violent, or not? Because I guess you can gauge the ratio of sort of defence killings versus those that are claimed to be abusive.
You actually can't gauge that ratio in IPID's data, partly because IPID's investigations are often so weak. So what we see is that it's very difficult to tell just at the face value whether a killing by the police has been lawful or whether it has been unlawful. But what we do know and what we do see in this data is that violence is part and parcel of everyday policing in this country. There are an inordinate amount of assault and shooting allegations, torture allegations, and even rape allegations against on-duty officers. And so that abuse of power, we have to assume, is manifest in the high number of killings that we see perpetrated by the police. And our investigation has incidentally gone into some of these killings, and we have seen the abuse, first of all, the disproportionate violence that the police have used on suspects that they've arrested, for instance, often causing, not often, but sometimes causing deaths. And I think the failure of the accountability that we mentioned earlier is an enabling factor here. When police officers are not held accountable for lesser offences, there is a tendency of the severity and the violence of those offences to escalate. And this is something that any IPID investigator will tell you, to escalate. And it's not surprising then that we see the very high number of people being killed by the police and dying in custody in this country.
Finally, and very quickly, what do you hope to achieve with this platform? I guess it does put some power in the hands of communities, because they now can see what's going on at their local police station.
You're absolutely right. So we've been, as an investigative journalist myself, I've had access to this data for a very long time, but I've realized that it's not really up to me exclusively to investigate this and to keep the spotlight on this. Communities, and especially poor and black communities in this country, are the coalface of the struggle and of the abuses of power implied in the data and in the investigation that we've done. And so what this dashboard hopes to do is to take some of the empowerment that this data has given us as investigative journalists and to hand that over to civil society, to communities, to anyone really at their localized level who has a concern with public sector accountability in their local communities, because police stations really is the interface of government for many, in many communities, rural communities, townships. And what we hope to achieve with this is to see over time that this data is used by civil society at the local level, and that translates into a movement for reform at the highest level and at the station level in South Africa.
All right. Thank you very much, and best of luck with this platform, which everybody now can access. Investigative journalist at Viewfinder, Daneel Knoetze. We take a short break. Lots more to come on The Full View.